My 4-year-old told the nurse. The babysitter says checking my body is our special secret from Daddy. The pediatric nurse smiled at my son while wrapping the blood pressure cuff around his small arm, making conversation the way they always do with kids to keep them calm. So, Connor, have you been staying healthy? Any boo-boos we should know about? My boy looked up at her with those wide brown eyes and said it so casually, like he was mentioning what he had for breakfast. Miss Vera checks my body every day after school, but it's our special secret from Daddy. The nurse's hand froze mid-pump on the cuff. Her smile stayed plastered on her face, but something changed in her eyes, a sharpness that hadn't been there before. She glanced at me standing by the door, then back to Connor. That's interesting, buddy. What kind of checking does Miss Vera do? I stepped forward, confused but not yet alarmed. He means his babysitter. She's been with us for 3 months since my wife died. She's very thorough about hygiene and making sure he washes properly. The nurse nodded slowly, still watching Connor's face. Is that right, Connor? Does Miss Vera help you wash up? My son shook his head, his little legs swinging from the examination table. No, she checks everywhere to make sure I'm growing right. She takes pictures too, so she can remember if anything changes. But Daddy can't know because it would ruin the surprise for my birthday. Ice water flooded my veins. The nurse's professional mask cracked slightly. She stood up smoothly and said, Mr. Brennan, would you mind stepping into the hallway with me for just a moment? Connor, you sit tight and look at this cool book about dinosaurs. In the hallway, she closed the door and her voice dropped to barely a whisper. I'm a mandated reporter, and what your son just described raises serious concerns. I need to ask you some direct questions, and I need you to stay calm. My hands started shaking. What are you talking about? Vera's been nothing but professional. She was recommended by the nanny agency. She has references. The nurse pulled out a tablet and started typing. When did these checks start? Has your son mentioned them before? Have you noticed any behavioral changes? Any regression, bedwetting, nightmares, fear of being alone with her? I tried to process her words, but they felt like they were coming from underwater. No, I mean, he's been quieter lately, but his mother just died 6 months ago. He's grieving. We both are. She looked at me with something between pity and urgency. Mr. Brennan, when children say someone is checking their body and taking pictures, and it's supposed to be a secret from parents, those are textbook warning signs. I'm required by law to report this to Child Protective Services immediately. They'll likely contact you today. My knees went weak. You think someone is hurting my son? You think Vera is doing something to him? The nurse's expression stayed professional, but firm. I think your son disclosed something concerning, and it needs to be investigated properly by people trained in forensic interviewing. Children his age rarely fabricate specific details about physical contact. Please don't question him about this further or contact the babysitter until authorities have been involved. You could contaminate evidence or alert a potential perpetrator. I couldn't breathe. The fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright, the hallway too narrow. I need to see him. I need to take him home right now. The nurse blocked my path gently. You can absolutely take him home. But first, I need to complete a basic examination to document anything visible, and you'll need to be present for that. It's part of the protocol. We went back into the room where Connor was flipping through the dinosaur book, humming to himself like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't just shattered my entire world. The nurse examined him carefully, checking his skin, his limbs, asking gentle questions about whether anything hurt. She took photos with a medical camera, documenting everything. Connor seemed confused but cooperative, asking if he was getting a shot today. Driving home, my hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Connor sat in his booster seat, talking about the T-Rex in the book, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I wanted to ask him 1,000 questions, but the nurse's warning echoed in my head. Don't contaminate the evidence. Let the professionals handle it. But this was my son, my only child, the last piece of my wife I had left. How could I not ask? How could I just sit with this terrible knowledge festering in my chest? I pulled into our driveway and saw Vera's small sedan parked on the street where she always left it. She'd been with Connor since noon, had 3 more hours on her shift. The woman I'd trusted, the woman who'd held my sobbing son during his nightmares about his mother, might be a monster. I walked Connor inside and found Vera in the kitchen preparing his afternoon snack, apple slices with peanut butter arranged neatly on his favorite dinosaur plate. She looked up with that warm smile she always had, tucking a strand of graying hair behind her ear. Welcome back, Mr. Brennan. How was the appointment? Everything okay? I studied her face, searching for some sign of deception, some crack in the facade. She looked exactly like she always did, matronly and kind, the type of woman who baked cookies and knitted scarves. "Connor, why don't you go play in your room for a bit? I need to talk to Miss Vera." My son grabbed 2 apple slices and scampered off happily, leaving me alone with this woman who might be a predator. Vera's smile faded as she read my expression. Is something wrong? Did the doctor find something concerning? I kept my distance, every instinct screaming to throw her out of my house, but the nurse's words held me back. Alert, a potential perpetrator. "Connor mentioned something to the nurse today, about you checking his body and taking pictures. He said it was a secret from me." The color drained from Vera's face so quickly I thought she might faint. She grabbed the counter for support, her mouth opening and closing without sound. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Oh God, oh my God, I never thought. I was only trying to help." "Help with what, exactly?" My voice came out harder than I intended, sharp enough to cut. Vera's eyes filled with tears, and she pulled out her phone with trembling hands. "Your wife, before she died, she made me promise. She was so worried about Connor's birthmark, the one on his lower back. Her grandmother died of melanoma, and she was terrified it might be skin cancer. She asked me to document it weekly, to watch for any changes, but she didn't want you to worry because you already had so much stress. I've been taking photos every Monday after his bath to track if it's growing or changing color. I was going to show you all of them on his birthday as proof that everything is fine, that he's healthy." She thrust her phone at me, and I saw the photo gallery open to dozens of clinical images, all dated and time-stamped. Close-ups of a penny-sized brown birthmark on Connor's lower back, taken from the same angle, clearly medical in nature. Nothing inappropriate, nothing sexual, just documentation. Why would you keep this a secret from me? Why would you tell a 4-year-old to keep secrets about his body? Vera wiped her eyes, mascara smearing down her cheeks. I didn't think about how it would sound. Your wife was so insistent and she was dying, and I promised her I'd look after him. I told Connor it was a surprise for your birthday to show you he was growing up healthy. I'm so stupid. I should have just told you. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. "Mr. Brennan, this is Natasha Reeves from Child Protective Services. I've been assigned to investigate a report filed earlier today regarding your son Connor. I need to schedule a forensic interview as soon as possible, preferably this afternoon. Are you available?" My stomach churned. "Yes, I'm available. But I think there's been a misunderstanding. The babysitter was documenting a birthmark at my late wife's request." The social worker's tone remained neutral and professional. "That may well be the case, but we still need to follow protocol. The interview will be conducted by a trained specialist who can properly assess the situation. Can you bring Connor to our office at 4 o'clock? I agreed, and hung up, looking at Vera, who stood there crying silently. "You need to leave, right now. I don't know what to believe, but CPS is involved, and I can't have you here." She nodded, gathering her purse and jacket with shaking hands. "I never meant to hurt him, Mr. Brennan. I loved your wife like a sister. This was all just a terrible mistake." After she left, I sat on the couch with my head in my hands, trying to piece together what was real. The photos looked innocent enough, but why the secrecy? Why not just tell me? My wife Rachel had been paranoid about health issues toward the end, the cancer eating away at more than just her body. She'd made me promise all sorts of strange things, including that I'd never remarry, that I'd raise Connor to remember her voice, that I'd check for signs of illness constantly. Connor wandered into the living room, clutching his stuffed elephant. "Where's Miss Vera?" I pulled him onto my lap, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo. "She had to go home early today, buddy. Can Daddy ask you something important?" He nodded against my chest. "When Miss Vera checks your body, where exactly does she look?" Connor pulled up his shirt and twisted around to point at his lower back. "Right here. She takes pictures of my special spot and says it's for science, like when the doctor looks in my ears." Relief washed over me, but it was quickly followed by anger. At Vera for being so careless with her words, at the medical system for jumping to the worst conclusion, at my dead wife for putting this burden on everyone, at myself for not knowing my own son well enough to understand what he meant. The CPS office was in a gray building downtown that smelled like disinfectant and despair. Natasha Reeves met us in the lobby, a woman in her 40s with short auburn hair and tired eyes that had probably seen too much. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Mr. Brennan. Connor, my name is Natasha. You're not in trouble at all, okay? We're just going to talk in a special room with some toys." She led us down a hallway to what looked like a child's playroom with a one-way mirror on the wall. I wasn't allowed inside for the interview, but they let me watch from an observation room next door. A child psychologist named Dr. Lin conducted the interview. a gentle Asian woman who sat cross-legged on the floor with Connor and played with blocks while asking questions so casual they barely seemed like questions at all. "So Connor, tell me about Miss Vera. Is she nice?" My son nodded enthusiastically, building a tower. "She makes good mac and cheese and lets me have 2 cookies after dinner." Dr. Lin smiled. "That does sound nice. Does Miss Vera help you with bath time?" Connor shook his head. "No, Daddy does baths. Miss Vera checks my special spot after to make sure it's growing right. Mommy asked her to before she went to heaven." The psychologist's expression never changed, but I saw her make a note. "Can you show me where your special spot is?" Connor lifted his shirt and pointed to the birthmark on his lower back. "Right here. It's brown and round. Miss Vera says it's special because everyone has different spots and this one is mine." The interview lasted 45 minutes, and by the end, Dr. Lin had established clearly that Vera had only photographed the birthmark, had never touched Connor inappropriately, and had framed it as helping his deceased mother watch over him from heaven. When we left the interview room, Natasha pulled me aside while Connor colored at a table with a volunteer. "Based on Dr. Lin's assessment, there's no evidence of abuse. Your son was consistent, specific, and showed no signs of trauma or coaching. The photos on the babysitter's phone corroborate his story. However, we'll still need to do a full investigation, interview the babysitter, and review all documentation. The case will remain open for 30 days. I drove home with Connor singing along to the radio, completely unaware that his innocent words had triggered an earthquake in our lives. My phone rang again, this time a number I recognized. Vera's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Her voice came through, choked with sobs. "Mr. Brennan, the police just called me. They want me to come in for an interview tomorrow. I could lose my childcare license over this. I could lose everything, and I was only trying to keep a promise to a dying woman." The guilt hit me like a freight train. "Vera, I'm sorry. The system has to follow protocol. But for what it's worth, I believe you now." Connor's interview made it clear what was really happening. She cried harder. "Your wife made me swear not to tell you because she didn't want you to have one more thing to worry about. She knew how stressed you were with her treatments and taking care of Connor and trying to keep your job. She thought she was protecting you." I closed my eyes, one hand on the steering wheel. She was wrong. Secrets about our son's body should never be kept from me, no matter how good the intention. Vera agreed through her tears and hung up, leaving me in silence except for Connor's off-key rendition of some cartoon theme song. That night, after putting Connor to bed, I pulled out the box of Rachel's letters she'd written before she died. One for Connor's graduation, one for his wedding day, one for me on difficult anniversaries. I'd been too afraid to read most of them, the grief still too raw. But tonight, I needed answers. I found one marked, "Open if questions arise about promises I made." My hands shook as I tore the envelope. Rachel's handwriting, always neat despite the morphine, filled 3 pages. "My dearest Michael, if you're reading this, it means one of my promises caused problems. I'm so sorry. The cancer made me paranoid toward the end, convinced that Connor would inherit my family's health issues. I made Vera swear to watch Connor's birthmark because my grandmother's melanoma started from a mole she ignored. I didn't tell you because you were already drowning, working full-time while caring for me and Connor. You'd lost 15 pounds. You weren't sleeping. I thought I was helping by handling one more thing. I was wrong and I'm sorry. Please forgive Vera. She's a good woman who loved me and loves our son. She only did what I begged her to do." Tears blurred the words. Rachel had been trying to protect everyone, but her secrets had nearly destroyed an innocent woman's life and put our son through a traumatic investigation. I kept reading. "Michael, I need you to know that Vera has no family of her own. She's been alone since her husband died 10 years ago. Connor became like a grandson to her, and she poured all her unused maternal love into caring for him. Don't let my mistake cost her that relationship. She's one of the good ones." The letter continued with more apologies and instructions, but I couldn't read anymore. I folded it carefully and added it to the documentation for CPS, proof of Rachel's role in this mess. Maybe it would help Vera keep her license. The next morning, Detective Sterling Vance called me from the police department's child crimes unit. His voice was gruff and weary. "Mr. Brennan, I've reviewed your son's forensic interview and the photographic evidence from the babysitter's phone. Everything appears consistent with the explanation provided. However, I still need to interview Ms. Vera Castillo formally to close the investigation. Is there anything else you think I should know?" I told him about Rachel's letter, about her paranoia and her promises, about how Vera had been following a dying woman's wishes. Detective Vance sighed deeply. "This job would be easier if people would just communicate honestly. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, Mr. Brennan. I'll include your wife's letter in the report. It should help establish context. Vera's interview happened 2 days later, and I wasn't privy to the details, but she called me afterward sounding exhausted and relieved. Detective Vance was tough but fair. He believed me once I showed him all the photos organized by date and explained about your wife. They're closing the criminal investigation. No charges, but CPS still has to finish their review and the agency suspended me pending the outcome. I can't work with any families right now. The guilt consumed me. This woman had loved my wife, had helped us through the darkest time of our lives, and now she was being punished for it. Vera, I'm going to write a statement supporting you. I'll explain everything to your agency. This wasn't your fault. She thanked me through tears and hung up, leaving me staring at my phone, wondering how good intentions had created such destruction. Connor noticed Vera's absence immediately. Where's Miss Vera? Is she sick? I knelt down to his level, trying to find words a 4-year-old could understand. Remember when you told the nurse about Miss Vera checking your special spot? Well, when kids talk about that, grown-ups have to make sure everything is safe and okay. So Miss Vera can't come over for a little while until they finish checking. Connor's face crumpled. Did I get Miss Vera in trouble? I didn't mean to. I love Miss Vera. My heart shattered. No, buddy, you didn't do anything wrong. You should always tell doctors and nurses the truth. The grown-ups just have to follow rules to keep all kids safe. Miss Vera knows you love her, but the damage was done. Connor started having nightmares, waking up crying that he'd hurt Miss Vera, that she wouldn't come back because he talked too much. His preschool teacher called to say he'd become withdrawn, wasn't playing with other kids, kept asking if he was in trouble. I took him to a child therapist, Dr. Ellen Frost, who explained that Connor was experiencing guilt and confusion over something he didn't fully understand. He knows his words caused Miss Vera to disappear, but he doesn't understand why. From his perspective, he told the truth like adults always say to do, and now someone he loves is gone. We need to help him process that his honesty was the right choice, even though the consequences feel bad. The therapy sessions became a weekly routine. Connor would play with toys while Dr. Frost asked gentle questions, helping him understand that sometimes grown-ups have to follow rules that seem silly or unfair, but that keeping secrets about bodies is never okay, even if someone nice asks you to. But Miss Vera is nice, Connor insisted during one session. She never hurt me. She made me laugh. Dr. Frost nodded patiently. I believe you, Connor. Sometimes nice people make choices that accidentally break important rules. Miss Vera was trying to help, but she should have told your daddy about checking your special spot. That's the rule that got broken, not anything you did. Meanwhile, Natasha from CPS conducted her investigation with the thoroughness of someone who'd been burned by cutting corners. She interviewed Connor's preschool teachers, our neighbors, Connor's pediatrician, and even my sister who lived 2 states away. She reviewed my phone records, financial statements, and social media accounts looking for any red flags. She visited our home unannounced twice to observe how Connor interacted with me and to check the living conditions. Every interaction felt like an invasion, but I understood she was doing her job. Too many children fell through the cracks because workers didn't dig deep enough. Better to be overly cautious than to miss real abuse. 3 weeks into the investigation, Natasha sat across from me in my living room with her worn briefcase open on the coffee table. Mr. Brennan, I've completed my assessment. There's no evidence of abuse or neglect in your home. Your son is well cared for, emotionally healthy, and the incident with Ms. Castillo appears to have been a genuine misunderstanding stemming from your late wife's instructions. I'm recommending case closure with no further action. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt lightheaded. What about Vera? Will this affect her ability to work again? Natasha's expression softened slightly. That's not my jurisdiction. Her childcare license is handled by the state licensing board. They'll review our findings along with the police report, but ultimately it's their decision. I spent that evening crafting a detailed letter to the licensing board, explaining Rachel's role, including her written instructions, describing Vera's excellent care prior to this incident, and emphasizing that Connor was never harmed or traumatized by her actions, only by the investigation that followed. I sent copies to Vera's agency, to Detective Vance for his file, and to my attorney, just in case legal complications arose later. Every word felt inadequate to capture the complexity of the situation. How good people had created chaos through miscommunication and secrets. I included Dr. Frost's professional opinion that Connor showed no signs of trauma from Vera's care, only distress from her sudden absence. Maybe it would make a difference. Connor's 5th birthday arrived 6 weeks after the nurse's report, marked by an emptiness that had nothing to do with his mother's absence. We'd planned a small party with preschool friends, but Connor kept asking if Miss Vera could come. She promised she'd see my surprise on my birthday. She promised, Daddy. I didn't have the heart to explain that the surprise was the photo documentation proving his birthmark hadn't changed, that it had all been for this moment that would never come. Instead, I bought an extra-large chocolate cake and let him invite twice as many kids as originally planned, hoping quantity would distract from quality. It didn't work. He sat in the corner for most of the party, watching other kids play with his new toys. That evening, after everyone left and the house was quiet, except for Connor's soft breathing in his bed, my phone rang. Vera's number. I answered immediately. Mr. Brennan, I wanted you to hear it from me. The licensing board reviewed everything and decided not to revoke my license. I'm officially cleared to work again. The agency is reinstating me on Monday. Her voice trembled with emotion. Your letter made the difference. The board said your detailed account and your wife's written instructions established clear context. They're requiring me to take additional training on appropriate documentation and communication with parents, but I can work again. Relief warmed my chest. That's wonderful news, Vera. You deserve it. You're a good person who got caught in an impossible situation. There was a long pause before she spoke again. Would you consider letting me see Connor? Not as his babysitter necessarily, but maybe just as someone who cares about him? I miss him terribly, and your letter mentioned he's been struggling with guilt over what happened. I thought about Connor's nightmares, his questions about whether Miss Vera still loved him, his withdrawn behavior at school. Let me talk to Dr. Frost. If she thinks it would help him, then yes. But we need to be smart about how we handle it. Dr. Frost suggested a supervised reunion in her office where Connor could see Vera in a neutral setting with professional support if emotions ran high. The following Wednesday, I brought Connor to the therapy office, not telling him who would be there, worried he might get too excited or anxious. When we walked into Dr. Frost's playroom and he saw Vera sitting on the floor with his favorite puzzle spread out, he froze. Miss Vera? His voice was tiny, uncertain. Vera's eyes filled with tears. Hi, Connor. I've missed you so much. Connor looked at me for permission, and I nodded. He launched himself across the room into her arms, and they both cried, while I stood there with my own eyes burning. Dr. Frost let them reconnect naturally, watching their interaction carefully. Connor told Vera about his birthday party, about the new dinosaur toys he got, about how he learned to write his name at school. Vera listened like every word was precious, asking questions and laughing at his stories. After 30 minutes, Dr. Frost gently intervened. Connor, Miss Vera and your daddy need to talk for a few minutes. Can you draw me a picture of your favorite birthday present? Connor nodded and settled at the art table, immediately absorbed in his drawing. Dr. Frost pulled Vera and me aside, keeping Connor in clear view. This is obviously a healthy relationship. Connor shows no fear or anxiety around her, only joy and relief. With your permission, I'd recommend supervised visits to rebuild their relationship slowly. We established a schedule. Saturday afternoons at the park, with me present, giving them time together while maintaining appropriate boundaries. The first visit, Connor held Vera's hand the entire time, chattering nonstop about everything he'd bottled up during their separation. Vera listened with infinite patience, occasionally glancing at me as if to confirm this was really okay, that she wasn't going to lose him again. I gave her reassuring nods, understanding now that Rachel had seen something in this woman worth trusting. Her only crime had been loving my son too much to say no to his dying mother. After 3 weeks of supervised visits, Connor's nightmares stopped. His teacher reported he was playing with other kids again, smiling more, participating in circle time instead of sitting silently. Dr. Frost attributed the change to Connor understanding that his honesty hadn't destroyed his relationship with Vera, that he could trust his words wouldn't make people he loved disappear. He's learned an important lesson, she explained during one of our sessions. That truth-telling might have complicated consequences, but it's still the right choice. That's a sophisticated moral concept for a 5-year-old to grasp. One Saturday afternoon at the park, while Connor played on the swings, Vera sat next to me on the bench. I want to apologize again for how I handled everything. Rachel asked me to keep it secret, but I should have told you anyway. I should have known that secrets about a child's body are never appropriate, no matter the reason. I watched Connor pump his legs, trying to swing higher. We all made mistakes. Rachel for asking you to keep secrets. You for agreeing. Me for not noticing what was happening. The medical system for jumping to the worst conclusion. We were all doing what we thought was right, and it nearly destroyed everyone involved. Vera nodded slowly. I've been thinking about going back to school to become a licensed social worker. After everything that happened, I understand now how important proper protocols are. I want to help other families navigate these situations better. The idea surprised me, but it made sense. Vera had lived through the system from the accused person's perspective. She understood how terrifying and dehumanizing it felt to have your intentions questioned, your character examined, your every action scrutinized for hidden meanings. I think you'd be excellent at that. You have empathy and real-world experience that textbooks can't teach. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since this nightmare began. Rachel used to say that our worst experiences can become our greatest teachers if we let them. I'm finally understanding what she meant. Connor ran over, breathless and grinning. "Miss Vera, Daddy, can we get ice cream, please?" Vera looked at me, and I saw the question in her eyes. Permission to be part of normal life again, to share simple joys without everything being heavy with meaning and history. I nodded. Ice cream sounds perfect. We walked to the corner shop, Connor between us holding both our hands, chattering about which flavor he wanted. An older woman passing by smiled at us. What a beautiful family. The assumption stung, but not as much as it once would have. We weren't a family in the traditional sense, but we were something. A unit forged through grief and misunderstanding, and ultimately, forgiveness. Months passed. Summer turned to fall, and Connor started kindergarten. Vera enrolled in community college classes for social work, while continuing her childcare work with other families, armed now with training on proper documentation and communication. We fell into a routine of Saturday park visits that felt less like supervision and more like friendship. Connor's relationship with Vera stabilized into something healthy and clear, with boundaries everyone understood. She was Miss Vera, a trusted adult who loved him, but not a parent. Not a replacement for Rachel, just herself. One evening, after Connor was asleep, I received an email from Natasha at CPS. "Mr. Brennan, I wanted to update you that we've implemented new training protocols for medical professionals about how to assess concerning disclosures from children. Your case highlighted the need for better communication between mandated reporters and families before jumping to investigations. We're requiring pediatric staff to ask clarifying questions and document exact wording before filing reports. It won't prevent all misunderstandings, but hopefully it will reduce unnecessary trauma to families like yours." I read the email twice, feeling oddly validated. Our suffering had created change, had potentially protected other families from experiencing the same nightmare of good intentions colliding with rigid protocols. I wrote back thanking her and asking if she'd be willing to speak with Vera about her social work ambitions. Natasha agreed immediately, and they met for coffee the following week. Vera called me afterward, excited in a way I hadn't heard since before Rachel died. She told me about specialized positions in family reunification, helping families rebuild after CPS involvement. That's what I want to do, Michael. I want to be the person who helps people like us put the pieces back together. Her enthusiasm was infectious. "That's perfect for you, Vera. You'll be amazing at it." She laughed, light and hopeful. Rachel would have loved this irony. Me ending up in social work because of a misunderstanding about following her deathbed wishes. She always did have a twisted sense of humor. Connor's 6th birthday party was different from his 5th. The house was full of kids and laughter, and this time, Connor was in the center of it all, playing games and showing off his new bicycle. Vera helped me serve cake and clean up spills, comfortable and natural in our home again. At one point, Connor climbed onto her lap while opening presents, and she kissed the top of his head unconsciously, the gesture so maternal it made my throat tight. Later, after everyone had left and Connor was crashed in bed surrounded by new toys, Vera helped me finish cleaning. "Thank you for letting me be part of his life again. I know it wasn't easy, trusting me after everything." I loaded the dishwasher, considering my words carefully. "Trust is complicated. I trust that you love Connor and would never intentionally hurt him. I trust your judgment now that we've established clear communication. But more than that, I trust that we learned from our mistakes. All of us." Vera nodded, drying a plate. "Rachel's letter saved me, you know. If you hadn't found that and shared it, the licensing board might have ruled differently. She protected me even from beyond the grave." The thought made me smile despite the lingering sadness. "She loved you like family, Vera. She trusted you with our most precious thing. That trust was justified, even if her methods were flawed." That night, I pulled out Rachel's letters again, reading through ones I'd been avoiding. One marked, "For Michael, when you're ready to let go," caught my attention. I opened it carefully, prepared for more guilt or instructions, but instead found something unexpected. My dearest Michael, if you're reading this, enough time has passed that you might be ready to hear what I couldn't say when I was alive. Let yourself love again. Let someone new into your life and Connor's life. I don't want you to be alone forever, honoring a ghost. Connor needs to see healthy love and partnership. Don't let my death trap you in permanent grief. Find joy again. You have my blessing, my encouragement, and my eternal love. Let me go so you can live. The words hit me like a physical blow. Permission I didn't know I needed, from the person whose opinion still mattered most. I thought about Vera's easy comfort in our home, the way Connor lit up around her, how she'd become woven into the fabric of our daily life. But I pushed those thoughts away. Too complicated, too soon, too much history between us. Some connections were better left as friendship, uncomplicated by romance or expectations. Vera deserved better than being chosen because she was convenient and already loved my son, and I deserved time to figure out who I was without Rachel before trying to be someone's partner again. Connor graduated from kindergarten with a small ceremony where proud parents took endless photos. Vera came as my guest, sitting next to me in the audience while Connor received his diploma and beamed at us both. Afterward, Connor ran to us, diploma clutched in his small fist. "Did you see? I didn't trip on the stage." We both assured him he was perfect, and he insisted on taking a picture of the three of us together. A teacher offered to take it so we could all be in the frame. We stood there, Connor between us with our hands on his shoulders, smiling at the camera. The photo later became my phone's wallpaper, replacing the old one of just Connor and Rachel, moving forward while holding the past gently. Vera completed her associate degree and applied for her bachelor's in social work at the State University. The program accepted her with a partial scholarship based on her essay about experiencing the child welfare system from an unusual perspective. She started classes in the fall while continuing part-time childcare work. Connor was proud of Miss Vera going to school just like him, and loved hearing about her classes. She'd explain age-appropriate versions of what she was learning, teaching him about feelings and healthy communication. He absorbed it all like a sponge, becoming more emotionally articulate than most kindergartners. Dr. Frost said Vera was doing informal therapy just by modeling good emotional processing. 2 years after the nurse's report that shattered everything, I received a letter from the state licensing board. They were conducting a review of their policies around mandated reporting and wanted to interview me about our experience. I agreed and spent an afternoon at their offices telling our story to a panel of administrators and policymakers. They asked detailed questions about the investigation's impact, what could have been done differently, and whether the system had protected or harmed my family. I answered honestly. The system did what it was designed to do, which is take child safety seriously, but the collateral damage was severe. Better training for everyone involved, better communication protocols, and more nuanced assessment tools could prevent families from being traumatized by investigations into innocent situations. One administrator, a woman named Judith Kemp, who ran the forensic interview program, took notes throughout my testimony. Afterward, she approached me privately. "Mr. Brennan, would you be willing to participate in training videos for mandated reporters? Your case illustrates perfectly how well-meaning people can create concerning situations without any malicious intent. Medical professionals need to see the full context, not just react to trigger words." I thought about Vera's social work ambitions, about changing systems from the inside, about making our suffering mean something. Yes, I'll do it, but I want Vera Castillo involved too. She should tell her side of the story. The training video project took 6 months to complete. They filmed interviews with me, Vera, Connor's therapist Dr. Frost, Detective Vance, Natasha from CPS, and even the pediatric nurse who filed the initial report. Everyone spoke candidly about their role in the situation, what they would do differently, and what they learned. The nurse, whose name was Angela Pruitt, broke down on camera talking about how she'd followed protocol but hadn't considered asking clarifying questions first. I heard a child say someone was checking his body and taking secret pictures, and my training kicked in. I never thought to ask where specifically or for what purpose. Before triggering an investigation, I would handle it differently now. Connor, now 7 years old and in 2nd grade, had become the kid everyone wanted as their friend. His teacher said he had unusual emotional intelligence for his age, could mediate conflicts between other kids, and always stood up for children being excluded or bullied. Connor has this gift for seeing the best in people while also being honest about hurt feelings. It's remarkable. I recognized Rachel's compassion in him, but also Vera's steady presence, and hopefully some of my own learned wisdom about grace under pressure. He was becoming his own person, shaped by all of us, and the challenges we'd navigated together. Vera graduated with her bachelor's degree in social work and immediately got hired by the same CPS office that had investigated us. Natasha had retired, but she'd recommended Vera personally for a position in family reunification services. Vera's first day at work, she called me from her new office, voice trembling with emotion. "Michael, I'm sitting at a desk with Natasha's old nameplate. They gave me her caseload of families trying to get their kids back from foster care. I get to be the person who helps put families back together. Rachel would be so proud." I felt pride swell in my chest. "We're all proud of you, Vera. You earned this." That evening, Vera came over for dinner as she did most Wednesdays, our standing weekly routine. Connor set the table without being asked, chattering about his school day while Vera listened with complete attention. I made spaghetti, Rachel's recipe with the secret ingredient of honey in the sauce that Connor loved. We sat together at the table that had witnessed so much pain and healing, and Connor insisted we hold hands for grace. He'd started this tradition himself months ago, wanting to thank people for being in his life. "Thank you for Miss Vera, and for Daddy, and for Mommy in heaven, and for Mrs. Chen who gave me extra cookies at lunch today. Amen." After dinner, while Connor played in his room, Vera helped me clean the kitchen. We worked in comfortable silence, a routine we'd perfected over time. She washed, I dried, moving around each other like dance partners who knew every step. "Michael, can I ask you something?" Her tone was serious, and I turned to face her. "Of course." She took a deep breath. "What would you think about me reducing my Wednesday dinners? Not stopping completely, but maybe every other week?" My stomach dropped unexpectedly. "If you need more time for work or school stuff, I understand." She shook her head quickly. "No, it's not that. I've met someone, another social worker at the office. His name is Paul, and he's wonderful. But we've been trying to schedule dates, and Wednesdays are hard because I'm always here." The emotion that hit me was complex and confusing. Relief that she'd found someone. Disappointment that our routine would change. Something else I couldn't quite name. "Vera, you don't need my permission to date. You're not obligated to spend every Wednesday here. Connor and I will be fine." She studied my face. "But will you? You've gotten used to having help with Connor, having someone to share dinner with. I don't want to abandon you." I forced a smile. "You're not abandoning us. You're living your life, which is exactly what you should be doing. Connor and I will adjust. We're good at that." But the adjustment was harder than I expected. The first Wednesday without Vera felt wrong, the house too quiet with just Connor and me. He noticed immediately. "Where's Miss Vera? Did we forget to tell her about dinner?" I explained that Miss Vera had plans with a friend and would come next week instead. Connor accepted this easily, but I felt the absence like a missing tooth, my tongue constantly finding the gap. I'd gotten too comfortable with our arrangement, too dependent on her presence. That realization forced me to examine my feelings honestly for the first time in years. Did I have romantic feelings for Vera, or was I just lonely and conflating companionship with love? Dr. Frost, who I'd continued seeing occasionally for parenting guidance, helped me process these questions. It's natural to develop feelings for someone who's been such a consistent, positive presence in your life, especially after shared trauma. But you need to separate several things. Do you love Vera as the woman who saved your son from isolation after his mother died? Yes. Do you love her as a friend and trusted co-parent figure? Clearly. But are you in love with her romantically? That's the question you need to answer honestly, and then decide if it matters since she's now dating someone else. The clarity helped, even as it complicated things. I did love Vera, but whether that love was romantic or simply deep gratitude and affection remained unclear. Connor's 8th birthday approached, and I asked him what kind of party he wanted. He thought for a long moment before answering. "Can we have a small party with just you, me, Miss Vera, and her boyfriend? I want to meet him." The request surprised me, but I agreed. Vera seemed both pleased and nervous when I extended the invitation. "Are you sure? Paul knows about you and Connor, about our history, but meeting you might be intense." I laughed, despite my own nervousness. "Vera, he's dating a woman who's basically a co-parent to her former charge. If he can't handle meeting us, he's not right for you anyway." The birthday dinner was less awkward than I'd feared. Paul turned out to be a quiet man in his 50s, with gray temples and kind eyes. A widower who'd raised his daughter alone after his wife died in a car accident. He and I bonded over single-parent war stories, while Connor showed him his rock collection, and Vera made her famous lasagna. At one point, Connor climbed into Paul's lap and asked, "Are you going to marry Miss Vera?" Paul handled it with grace. "I don't know yet, buddy. We're still getting to know each other. But I like her very much." Connor nodded seriously. "She's the best. You should definitely marry her." After they left and Connor was asleep, I sat alone with the birthday cake remains and my complicated feelings. Watching Vera with Paul had clarified something important. She looked happy in a way I'd never seen before, lighter somehow, like a burden she'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. She deserved that happiness, and I deserved to let go of any possessive feelings I might have developed. Vera wasn't mine. She was her own person, who'd been generous enough to share her life with us, but who had every right to build a future that didn't revolve around Rachel's widower and orphaned son. The realization hurt, but it also freed me. I could love her purely as a friend, without the complication of unspoken, romantic feelings. 6 months later, Vera called with news. Paul proposed. "We're getting married in the spring. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. I want you and Connor there, if you'll come." I swallowed hard. "Of course we'll be there. Congratulations, Vera. I'm truly happy for you." And I was. The sharp edge of loss had dulled into genuine joy for her new beginning. Connor was ecstatic about the wedding, immediately asking if he could be the ring bearer. Vera laughed through happy tears. "I was hoping you'd ask. Of course you can." The wedding was simple and beautiful, held in a small garden with spring flowers everywhere. Connor took his ring bearer duties seriously, walking down the aisle with careful steps and presenting the rings with a flourish that made everyone laugh. Vera looked radiant in a simple cream dress, and Paul couldn't stop smiling. During the reception, Connor danced with Vera while I stood on the sidelines with Paul's daughter, Melissa. "They have quite a story," she said, nodding toward Connor and Vera. "Dad told me everything. It's beautiful how they found their way through such trauma to get here." I agreed, watching my son spin around with the woman who'd helped raise him, both of them laughing. Sometimes the worst things lead to unexpected grace. Vera and Paul moved into a house 3 miles from us, close enough for easy visits but far enough to establish healthy boundaries. Our Wednesday dinners shifted to monthly Sunday brunches that included Paul and sometimes Melissa. Connor adjusted to the new normal with surprising ease, understanding that people could love you and still have their own lives. "Miss Vera got married because love is good," he explained to his friend at school. "Just like my mommy loved my daddy, and Miss Vera loves Mr. Paul. Different kinds of love, but all good." Years passed. Connor grew into a thoughtful teenager who volunteered at the children's hospital where Rachel had received treatment. Vera became a supervisor in the CPS Family Reunification Department, known for her compassionate approach and high success rate getting kids safely back with their families. Paul retired from social work and started a mentoring program for kids in foster care. I eventually started dating again, carefully and slowly, but nothing serious materialized. Perhaps I'd used up my capacity for that kind of love with Rachel, or perhaps I was simply content with the life I'd built from the ashes of that terrible report. Connor's high school graduation brought everyone together again. He'd been accepted to college with a major in child psychology, planning to become a therapist for kids who'd experienced trauma. During his graduation speech as valedictorian, he talked about how honesty and truth-telling could be complicated but necessary. When I was 4 years old, I said something honest that caused a lot of pain for people I loved. But that honesty also revealed places where communication had broken down, where good intentions created bad situations. I learned that truth might hurt temporarily, but lies and secrets hurt forever. We honor the people we love, not by protecting them from hard truths, but by trusting them to handle reality with grace. After the ceremony, Connor gathered all of us together for a photo, me and Vera and Paul and Dr. Frost, who'd stayed involved in his life as a mentor. "This is my family," he said to the photographer. "Not traditional, but real. They all taught me different things about love and honesty and forgiveness." The photographer captured us, standing together, connected by invisible threads of shared history and hard-won wisdom. That photo now sits on my mantle next to the one of Rachel holding newborn Connor, both images representing different chapters of the same complicated story about love surviving impossible circumstances. On the 10th anniversary of that fateful nurse's report, I received an email from the licensing board. "Mr. Brennan, our training program using your family's case study has been implemented in 17 states and has reduced unnecessary CPS investigations by an estimated 23% while maintaining child safety standards. Your willingness to share your story has directly protected thousands of families from experiencing similar trauma. Thank you. I forwarded the email to Vera, who responded immediately. Rachel would say our suffering mattered if it helped others. She was right, I replied with a single word. Always. Connor came home from college that weekend, now 19 and confident in ways his 4-year-old self could never have imagined. We had dinner together, just the two of us, at the kitchen table where so much had unfolded. Dad, I've been thinking about that day I told the nurse about Miss Vera. Do you ever regret how it all played out? I considered the question carefully. I regret the pain everyone experienced. I regret that your mother's paranoia and secrecy created such chaos, but I don't regret the outcome. We all learned important lessons. Vera found her calling. The system improved its protocols. And you learned that honesty matters even when it's hard. Those lessons were expensive, but valuable. Connor nodded slowly, then smiled. Miss Vera wants to know if you'll come to dinner next week. She's making her lasagna for my birthday. The casual invitation, the continued connection across years and changing relationships, felt like the truest measure of healing. Tell her I'll bring the cake. We sat in comfortable silence, father and son, survivors of a storm that had tested everyone it touched. Outside the kitchen window, spring flowers bloomed in the garden I'd planted years ago with Connor's help, each season's growth building on the foundation of the previous year. Life continued forward, shaped by the past, but not trapped in it, rooted in truth and watered with forgiveness. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.